Welcome to the lab. I'm so excited to have my friend Peter with us today. He's living in Northern Ireland right now. Hopefully, he'll be joining us in the States, in the hopefully in the near future. So Peter, why don't you go and introduce yourself, man? Tell us just a little bit about yourself and how did you get here today?
Um, I, uh, my name is Peter Harrison, 28, from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Um, I'm married to a Virginian who is here with me, and we're currently trying to transfer life uh, over to the States at the minute, going through a pretty extensive visa process. So this will be our second visa that we're doing and our last visa that we do.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. So yeah, just waiting on the results of the first part, and then we'll see what happens after that. Hopefully, getting over to America at least by March or so. But how did I end up here today? Well, I've been friends with Nick for a while, not long enough, sadly. But yes, I just asked Nick if we could have a chat this week, and towards the end of the chat, he said, yes, we will do a podcast. And it wasn't a question, it was a we are doing it. So, yeah, just thought, yeah, sure, would absolutely love to do it. I've never done a podcast before, so I thought it'd be fun. And here I am.
Right on, man. I'm super pumped to have you here, man. And for a lot of reasons. One, man, I love your perspective on things. And, I feel like you have your life experiences have certainly like given you some different insights into some stuff. And so, kind of just like want to jump off with, like, so you lived most of your life in Northern Ireland. You were in the States for a little while. And so,
Hmm.
have you been, so when you were in the States, and I want to start there, then I'm gonna probably back up some. So like when you were in the States, you were at a ministry school. How did you find out about the school, and then what was it like as your time there? What were some
Okay.
takeaways?
Yep, sure. Yeah, so I 2015 went to Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry in Redding, California. I was there for 3 years, and that's where I met my wife, Danny. Um, I first got in contact, like thinking about this, probably straight after high school, or the equivalent to high school. I was 18 and I went to a conference. Having gone to Presbyterian Church for the previous 11 years, not really having a grid for worship music or I suppose like Christianity being fun. I went to this conference called Summer Madness for young people, where that was actually where Rem Collective started. Um, and They were just doing worship, and I just saw this and thought this is so attractive. I didn't know that you could be a Christian and have fun, and that was like a big thing for me, just coming straight out of high school and sort of wondering what the heck am I going to do with the rest of my life. And it was, yeah, it was fun after that. I recommitted, quote unquote, to Jesus on my birthday, my 18th birthday, and yeah, just had that love encounter with God, which, as I would say it, like things with Jesus is from an afterthought, absolutely everything. There have been since then where I haven't like really thought or like pressed in or dwelt on who God is and what He's doing and who Jesus is and like what He's doing in my life. So it's very hard to get away when you have such an intense encounter with Him. So to go from like a Presbyterian church for 11 years where a lot of stuff isn't really spoken about or a lot of things would be taboo, um, to have like full blown exposure to the Holy Spirit was like a huge transition, like one that was really tough. And it's not even just tough on like tough on your own perspective. It's like it's tough whenever you have people around you that have seen you in a certain way, and then all of a sudden you become a completely different person. I suppose it's like that whole idea of like familiarity breeding contempt. Like people seeing you as like this person that's just filled with joy and light, and they're like, oh no, but like that's like, okay, it'll rub off, or we know who he is, that sort of thing. So to go from where I was to that was mighty.
Yeah,
Massive perspective change.
That's got to be a challenge, man. I don't know how much I know about that of your life, but like, I couldn't imagine, like, I don't know, moving from that to this is got to be such a huge jump almost.
Yeah. Like even like circles of friends that you would have been involved with, like different groups and church groups as well. You know, you become this sort of person that people had sussed you out and they thought, yeah, okay, this is who he is. And then for me to actually turn around in that and be like, oh, I think I might have got this wrong. Like that was massive. And there were a lot of people, I suppose, like don't really take that very well over here. Like it's sort of like the culture where you're set in your ways. People expect you to be a certain kind of person, and then they'll sort of like just ignore you if there's any sort of whiff of change. So yeah, for me to go for that, it was a really humbling experience because a lot of people would either negate what's going on, and I think I just fully absorbed it, perhaps to my detriment, in a way of like it being difficult for other people to manage, but then realizing like I really have something here that like people really need, and it's not just like it's not boring anymore. That it is all about relationship, and that was just like far away from me. So I just became like fully in love with who Jesus was because he revealed himself to me, and I was like, wow, I just wouldn't go back to anything else. Like how not even how boring it was. It's just like there was no life to it, and then to have such life come out of me and burst forth, and just having a relationship with Jesus, that was just totally different. So yeah, and then so we've got all that happening at 18, and then I was going to college and was in college for 4 years, the languages degree. So I speak Spanish, I speak French. Uh, did 4 years of that. In my third year, I went to Argentina for a year and did work and got to part of it, which was phenomenal. It was part of a group called South American Mission Society based in Lurgan in Northern Ireland, and partnered with them. And man, it was some of the things phenomenal, like just the level of worship and sort of leaning that the people there do, it just like can put you to shame. I was blown away by people's hunger and their passion.
Yo, hey, hold that thought one quick. Artie will not shut up, dude. Can you hear him?
Yeah,
Oh
I
my
could hear them.
gosh, I gotta go see what this is.
Yeah, no worries.
What is it? And wouldn't you guess it was absolutely nothing. Artie. Oh my goodness. Okay, so sorry, Argentina.
Yeah. Um, yeah, just a phenomenal time. Like got to like people that I would consider still family that I love and stay in contact with. Amazing stuff. I actually like I feel like that was really formative where like this is probably gonna sound pretty crazy, but I actually like I have stories of like even at night Jesus like like feeling and almost like even seeing Jesus in the room with me, just like having real sort of intimacy, like knowing that there was nothing else that I could really do, like no access to anything, so I was left with him, and it was great
Wow.
because there was like a stretch of like 5 months where I just like felt like unstoppable in the sense of like so close to him and hearing his voice and getting to know who he is really intimately. And man, it was like laughing at 3 a.m. just
Wow.
all of a sudden, just like coming out of me, like ultimate joy. Uh, Phenomenal time. So much I could say about Argentina, but I'll move on. So after that, did my final year of school, finished that up, and at the end of that was thinking, what am I going to do? One of my best friends ended up doing ministry school. He was at Bethel, and just at the tail end of my third year, so I was in Argentina, and it was my 21st birthday. My parents very kindly decided that they were going to really blessed me. So they ended up buying me a ticket to go up from like Salta de Buenos Aires up to Lima, up to El Salvador, up to Reading.
Oh wow.
Um, so I had that paid for me, which was class. And then two just on the back of where I was in Argentina, and then going straight into 2 years or 2 years, going straight into like 2 weeks of being in Reading with my one of my best friends was just like a real gift, and just to see it like another like worship again, and just being like really impacted by like people's devotion to God. And like a lot of, I suppose I've been getting a lot of flack from people at university, like even like Christians as well. I was even like on the board of uh like our Queen's universities where I went to, and we had our like Christian Union, and like I was the praise coordinator there, and like with a heart, like real heart for like seeing worship, and like not even in like the building and the gatherings, but like bringing it to the streets and having like all these ideas, and just being kind of met with doctrine, and just people constantly like telling me that my head wasn't screwed on tight, but like I'm actually saying that, but like people think I'm crazy, but me just kind of sticking to my guns and going for it. And then you know after that, being in Reading and just being like totally impacted by people, like it's just in the culture and the way that people are there. And I suppose I'm saying it is because people would talk about Bethel to me. I hadn't been myself, and they like tell me about it, and they'd give me their opinion. All I had was like the opinions of what my friend knew, because he had been there for like 2 years. This was his third year there. And I just like hearing stories from him. And so I had that to stand on. And then being there myself, I was like, it's a kind of place which is so much like questioning around it, like all these like kind of stories of heresy and like grave sucking, all that weird stuff. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen. But people are very, they're more preoccupied with the scary things, and the sound things, the real things. It's what I've seen, unfortunately. But yeah, so I went there for 2 weeks, loved it, finished my final year of uni, and got accepted to go.
Wow.
And so I thought, right, okay, this must be what I'm supposed to do. And then ended up going for 3 years. First 2 years for school, and then I interned with the prophetic ministries team under a brilliant man called Ben Armstrong. And just when I was there, discovered like my heart for affirmation, like really speaking life over people, like the goodness of the prophetic, and the like how it brings people together, and the life that it gives, like not even like in the moment, but also like for the future as well. And dream interpretation, like how to do that really well, and like creating a lifestyle of prophetic worship to God, like not just keeping it for the moments or for the Sunday, but actually like meeting with God, being able to bless others in prophetic ways, not even with words, but like, whatever you're led to do, and just like walking hand in hand with Him. So that was really good.
So you went from university straight
Yeah.
into Bethel. You didn't really have a time gap.
No, not
So
really.
how old were you when you went to Reading?
I was 23, I think. Yeah.
That's a
Finished college at 22, so 23.
that's a good that's a good age, I think, to be immersed in a culture like that. Because you're
Yeah.
still. I mean, I don't know. I've not been there. I'm just thinking of when I was 20, when I was 23. What was I immersed in? And it was that seems better, but I'm sure that you could have pros and cons on either side.
Oh yeah, like well, when I was there, I was probably the majority of the people were around my age, maybe like slightly older.
Yeah.
You'd have a handful of people that have just gone there straight out of high school, but like a very small amount, and then it's mostly like graduates, and then a lot of like well, mostly that group, and then you'd have like the rest of the people would be those that were older. Um, so an amazing mix of people. Uh,
And from all over the world too,
oh
not just
yeah,
like
absolutely, yeah.
not just North Americans.
Oh no, probably. So I was told that half of the people that attend would be North Americans, and then it's just internationals for the rest of it.
Wow.
And like we have like in the school we have what are called revival groups. So we've got a pastor there who takes care of about 60 people. And in my revival group, in my first year there, my pastor, amazing lady called Lindsay Coyle from the Philippines, who was married to Matt, who was another pastor, and he's from the States himself. And we had like people from all over the place. And like even in my small group, I had a Canadian, a Norwegian, an Australian, and myself. So yeah, it's phenomenal.
Such a melting pot of backgrounds, even for you,
Yeah,
like going from Presbyterian into, a very
yeah,
charismatic group.
yeah,
That's awesome.
absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, highly
So,
enjoyable.
so you said when you were there, actually, I don't know if you said this or this is just something I wanted, to bring up is like, kind of like the prophetic, like, so you go from being a kid growing up in a regular church, and I know a lot of good Presbyterians, man. I'm not like
Mm.
down at them at
Oh
all.
yeah,
There's
oh
some
yeah,
great theology that's come out of the
yeah,
Presbyterians and great people that just love
absolutely.
God. But so like you go in there, you don't really practice, the gifts of the Spirit, or, you know, very conservative probably in their faith. And then you go to Bethel, which is probably a melting pot of conservative and whatever. But
Yeah,
like, so like how to, how are you able to adopt this prophetic, you know, uh, things in your life and moving from your background into that?
yeah. I think I was just really hungry for it. I and that was the I think that was the point of being at the school. I needed to stay hungry the whole time I was there. Like if and I didn't go into that place pretending that I knew anything because I didn't know a thing. Like I was just really hungry and wanted to know and was teachable in the way that, not naive, but teachable. Like I wanted to I'd seen this, I'd seen it work. I like these the reason why many people like the reason it kind of really set me on the course of going was like a couple of years. Well, it was actually probably the year before I went. So I'd gone to visit my friend, and then I'd came back and having just been like exposed to all this stuff. I ended up like years ago. I broke my ankle playing soccer, and like every so often it would like click my left ankle. And we had one of the pastors who was actually my pastor in second year. He came on a missions trip to Ireland and he had a team with him. And we were at this church and there was a line of these guys and they were just getting words of knowledge. And I was like, what the heck is this? What is a word of knowledge? Someone that has read the Bible, but then it's like, oh, that's actually biblical. Oh my goodness. Okay, right, let's think about this. And then this yeah, so along the line, like these guys are just getting words of knowledge, whatever those are for people. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. You see people in the crowd responding to like different ailments that they had. And then in my head, I was like, right, okay, just out of interest, God, what I want. I was just really, really like stern with God. It's like, all right, okay. So almost if this is real, I want someone to say, I want someone to get a word of knowledge for an ankle.
Mm.
And then, of course, like four people down the line, someone says, I feel like God wants to heal someone's ankle tonight. And I was like, all right, okay, right, fair enough. And then, of course, me and but then in my unbelief, I was like, all right, yeah, okay, right. Could it like ankles? It could have been an ankle, like whatever, like foot or whatever. But I was like, God, someone's going to say left ankle. It's going to be left ankle. And went down the line. And four people later, it's like someone years ago really badly damaged their left ankle. And I was gone. Like after that, I was like, all right, okay, I'm sorry. I will not doubt your ability to know who I am anymore. And then again, that was just like it's like understanding that God is so personal and so loving that He will single that out just for me in a crowd of I don't know four or 500 people.
Wow.
Like, that was really special. Um, and because of that, that was like that really got to my heart. It wasn't even the fact. I don't even think it was the fact that he did it. I think it was just like knowing that oh, that it was amazing that he could do that for me, and then he could do that for others as well. Like just the extent of his knowledge of who people are in the room and his love for them, and then just like his desire to want to have them be healed
Yeah.
at the moment. So yeah, so like just even like with all the sort of prophetic stuff, like words of knowledge, people in general, they added prophetic for their life, like hate word knowledge for them, all that sort of stuff. Like just really getting into who who he like trusting who he says he is, because he is Jehovah Rapha, he is Jehovah Jireh, and like just increasing that awareness for people and for myself, so that others can know like how really good he is and how much he wanted to do that. So yeah, um, I have like a ton of prophetic words that are still like being worked out, stuff I revisit, stuff that's for now, stuff that's for way later. But I was just hungry for it. I went there and I was like, look, I don't know, but God, you brought me here. I've seen a bit of this, but what's here? Like, what can I do? What can you do in me? And what can we do together? So
Yeah, I think I really, I don't, I mean, I follow Bethel and I've listened to, their teachings and obviously their music throughout the years and stuff. But the one thing that's always stood out for me from their senior leadership is that they're okay with like messes, and they're okay with like giving people like places to where they can, experience and where they can learn and where they can fail in things so that they can really learn and learn how to really
absolutely,
trust God. Because like even what you were just saying, like you were learning how to trust God, albeit in a very quick moment, like about the ankle. Like okay, well, what if it's you know ankle and then no, it has to be left ankle. Like you were like moving the
mm,
goalpost on what it needed
yeah,
to be. But but you were like learning how to trust God in that,
yeah,
and that's okay. But I really that's one thing that's always stood out for me from them is that they're willing to allow people to let there be messes and it's okay.
yeah.
And
And that's what it should be. It's what I'm not saying that they're the perfect model of a
of course
church,
not.
but I'd be hard pressed to find an environment where risk is celebrated as much as it is there.
I like that.
And like the amount of times that I have got prophetic words wrong, but then my team have like come up to me and they actually just celebrated like this is like we're here what 70 years on earth, and it's almost like this attitude of we need to get it all right before we go, when
Mm-hmm.
this is just much of a trial and getting stuff sorted, understanding who he is.
Yeah.
It's like it's that whole thing of whenever you're growing up, it's like that this metaphor came up so much, and it's just like it's for every day. It's like if you it's like with so like if my dad, for example, whenever I fell over, over, I should be getting up like I'm like they walk the stage. It's like I'm just learning to walk, like learning to walk, and I fall over once, and he's like, "Oh, give up, like no chance, not for you. So we'll do something else." Like how bad would that be? It's like in growing, it's like encouragement, like having team alongside you. Like I'll fall over, but I get like he picks me back up. I keep
Mm-hmm.
going. I get stronger. I build the muscles. I'm able to do it. And the prophetic is like a muscle. It's something that you develop over time. It's not a one and done thing.
Yeah.
And I get stuff wrong all the time, but at least I know that I'm trying, and I'm just trying to hear what he's saying and give it to people, not in a way that affords me anything. What's the point? That's not even the point. I
Yeah.
just want to hear his voice and give it to people. And some things can be for now, some things can be later, some things might not apply at all. But if we have that attitude of coming together around family, as opposed to, and like take it even further, like talk about like church government and all of that, like being in an environment where even with the leadership doing like prophetic ministry, like them getting it wrong, but like just the staff like celebrating the risk around them. And what I love is that like even people like Bill Johnson and Chris Felton, they don't agree on everything,
Yeah.
but that's not like that's like, and Bill would often talk about like the government of church, the apostles, the prophets, the teachers, the evangelists, and pastors, and how it is all so important that the government of the church gets it right, so that we understand how to pick each other up whenever messes come, whenever bad things happen. And so we're not always like at each other's backs. There's always accountability within the leadership team there, which is phenomenal. And people actually do have a right to say what they want to say without fear of abuse or rejection, neglect, any of that. And of course, like you can have like theological like whoopsies, like whoa, like what? Whoa,
Yeah.
we'll flip that came out of left field, but yeah, I, I don't know if we're going to talk about it later, but I have been in a scenario when you've got someone who is at the top calling the shots all the time, and it is quite destructive whenever that sort of falls apart. And I personally just think it is healthier if you've got people that they might not agree fully theologically, but they've got the basics right. Like they love Jesus, they want to worship him, they want to love him, they want him to be they want people to know who he is so they can go around the world and be Jesus for them and teach them to disciple well. They keep the basics really well. And that's what I love. It's beautiful.
I mean, that's not the whole, but that's a major part of the early church is that you had a lot of people that were trying to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
Now we've had 2,000 years of doctrine building that has been some good and bad things. It's
Yeah.
pigeonholed a lot of people or boxed a lot of people up. But the early church was filled with men and women trying to figure this thing out. And
Yeah.
it was okay to, like, if someone had a heresy, they would weed it out,
Mm,
and that person wasn't necessarily bad. They were just having this philosophical thoughts about Christ,
right.
and trying to figure this thing out. Like, how did this man
Yeah.
resurrect? How did this
Yeah.
man, how did this
Yeah.
man claim who he was God, then proved it? And then how was that a thing? How did the divine God become a human? And within him, there's this hypostasis union of the divine and humanity all
Yeah.
figuring this thing out. And so I really am
Yeah.
encouraged by situations or environments, schools like that that are
Yeah.
that invite that kind of thing.
Yeah. There has to be what point of when Jesus are getting to know him. That's just a closing thought on that. But I just like the way that it's like it's not about getting it all right because no one has it. I don't think anyone has it fully right. But
No.
I think it maybe what is more important is the ability to listen to others, to respect, not in a way that detaches you from them or what they're saying, or even like feel like you need to avoid people, but actually just having the love built inside of you to hear someone understand what they're doing and saying and have value for them even more so than actually maybe what the thing is sometimes, not all the time, but yeah, that's so important.
It sounds like we all need a healthy dose of humility, probably.
Yeah.
So you've been now for the last few years, you've been in another area of life, man, and you know
Yeah.
um, you've been in a bunch. You've been in some been in some suffering has been around you. We've all kind of experienced that, and not just 2020 and the pandemic and the coronavirus and stuff, but like, so how have you transitioned into like you're maturing in Christ of like, yeah, that was a great environment you were in before, but
Yeah.
you're not in that environment now. And you're not, I don't want to say far from that environment, but you're in a island significantly more locked down than the United States.
Right.
And so,
True.
like, how have you been able to, still cultivate your depth with God and outside of that flourishing environment where you have so much encouragement around you?
Yeah. I think being at Bethel is a good test, or like the aftermath of being there is a good test of
Yeah.
whether or not you actually went there to really build a foundation on Jesus, or whether you were just willing to go with the flow.
Mm,
And really honestly, I think I probably did both of that.
okay.
Um, now that I've been back in Northern Ireland for 3 years, I've seen areas in which I've definitely like pursued him in other areas that I've kind of just like, ride the wave of the environment and what's good. And I think that's like, it's impossible. I do like, if you're able to stay absolutely focused on the mission at hand, like fully for 3 years, then good for you. I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
Just a lot of things where we got in first year, and it stuck with me, and I don't know why until I left. But he said he actually thanked us, especially the international students, for being there because of the sacrifice that it was. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm here at Bethel for 3 years. Like, what's that about? But, you go to a ministry school in a foreign country for 3 years, a lot can happen in 3 years.
Yeah.
I came back, people had moved on with their lives.
Yeah, people get
like
married.
Relationships just aren't the same as they were before. People get married. Yeah, it's mental. And I came back and I was like, oh, that's what I meant. So I suppose it was just kind of coming back into an environment that was seemingly familiar yet unfamiliar, and trying to balance that thing I was talking about earlier of like the familiarity of it all, and how to, like, what to do as a result of coming back, and who to be around, like what conversations, relationships, trying to find a way back into normal life. And like, even someone actually said, another person said that it was like, after 3 years of doing ministry school, it normally takes about 5 years to reacclimatize after leaving.
That's
And I'm not like, I have 2 years to go. So yeah, and then like I've talked to you about sort of like stuff that happened coming back. Well, I got married, which is phenomenal, has been phenomenal. She's being in that period of trying to acclimatize to a new way of life and living in a foreign country herself. So Danny's had a lot to contend with, and with both together had a lot to contend with and grow in, just as newlyweds. Just this is like, what, 6 months before COVID started, and kind of now, like 2 years, almost 2 years in the whole COVID thing happening, it's like we almost feel like we don't even know if we've began our married life together. It's been crazy. So yeah, so there's that. But yeah, back to that that I was talking about earlier. I think I was really made aware of the things that I had pursued and the things that I didn't, that I maybe should have pressed into a bit more. And like church culture here, it's really interesting. Yeah, so after I had finished Bethel, I'd come back, and about 6 months later, I got a job as a youth pastor at a pretty big church that shall remain nameless. And I I ended up, I was there for a year and a half, and had a like volunteer team of 40 people, and yeah, about 120 kids to look after. It was phenomenal. Like, amazing stuff was happening. Like, loads of kids were giving their lives to Jesus. Like, amazing growth. Just seeing like transformation in these young people. And it wasn't even like people that had come to church, like people in the surrounding area, and like stories of kids going into school and talking to their friends about Jesus, them giving their lives to Jesus, inviting people along to like our youth. And yeah, it's just class. And my naive young man coming back to a country that's, it's just different. Getting involved and looking after such an extensive amount of people for a long time. And perhaps I did go into it with a lot of naivety, but then at the same time, I just did what I could. I was just honored as best as I could, and I just did the best that I could, and maybe too much to the point where I was working like maybe 60 hours a week, and just kind of like maybe taking the foot off the gas of actually get my priorities wrong. I'd learned to like treasure the secret place and keep that at the forefront, as we all really should, because let me tell you, If you don't do that, you will die. Like you will actually, you will implode and you will fall apart. I am a witness. I am absolute. I'm telling you that from absolute experience. If you do not cultivate that, you will not survive. You won't even survive. And like living just married and you know, like just doing too much, more than I should have. 60 hours a week. I got like to the point where I was like so anxious and my skin was like breaking out and welts and all that sort of stuff. Like terrible skin at the time, and like even came to like I was in Virginia for a couple of weeks after Christmas, as you know, and like a lot of stuff there happened. We won't talk about, but you remember. And just like a lot of sort of breakthrough of like me actually coming forth and saying, I can't do this anymore. This is toxic. I am running myself into the ground. It's impacting me. It's impacting my wife, our marriage, friendships, all of it. And I was just like, so you saw me, Nick. Like I was just a broken man, and then like even chatting to some other friends, like being like, you know, I think it's probably time to move on. And then when I got back, I that entered into probably the toughest period of my life that I have ever been in, and probably still sort of lingering in that in some sort of ways mentally. But yeah, for anyone that might listen, a very brief synopsis of what went down. I was let go from my position. What had happened was I had accidentally forgot to put an extra day into my HR system because we're like flying back from Virginia to Dublin. It was like you know, there's a layover, and forgot to take that into account. So I was supposed to. They thought I was coming back on Monday, but I ended up coming back on Tuesday. Forgot about it on Wednesday. Yeah, came the pastor of the church. We had a meeting and was like, look, just kind of all out of the blue. Apparently, there were like complaints from parents about the standard of youth. You know, like parents had come to her and complained. I had two interns at the time that had just asked about this, and they were like, no idea what's going on. In a nutshell, there was a bit of a conspiracy for me to be let go from the church, and I was very, very broken by that. In that I was there. I arrived on the Tuesday, and I was gone by the following Monday. Um, and you know, just got a lease on a house up there, 3 months into it, and like Danny and I were totally distraught as what had happened. Like you know, I'd made a mistake, and that was good enough for like gross misconduct, because it was in the contract, and you know, fair enough if they would have let me go on that. Like that was their choice, and like that's just the way it was. But then they added on all this other stuff that I don't think was true, and then it turned into this big mess of, you know, the pastor wrote me this letter. It's a 7-page long letter of all the things apparently that I had done wrong, which there was no even talk about even before then. So, and then we just had like people on staff just like totally abandoned Danny and I. People like leaving WhatsApp groups and chats that I was part of. People just shunning us completely, and I didn't even have a leg to stand on. And I felt like I was just thrown out of a job that was like, and you'd imagine like if you're on staff at a church like that and you've got great relationship with your senior leader, that they would probably like maybe see what you did, hear what you did, and then be like, okay, it was an honest mistake, and you know, we'll do better next time. There was nothing. Like it was like, well, you know, your one and done thing. And then all the stuff before that was kind of like seemed like a bit of a conspiracy. So yeah, after that, COVID hit directly after that, and I was out of a job for 8 months, living with my parents with Danny. Didn't get a job until December, and that was February when all that happened. So just like 8 months of bitterness, total resentment, anger, unknowing, frustration. I was like apathy, you name it. I lost sleep. I didn't understand what was happening. The only actually good thing that came of it was that I actually got to say goodbye to the kids, because after appealing what had happened, I had to go and speak to the board, who wouldn't let me have my job back. But then they said that, they gave me sort of like criterias for things, and I was able to go and say goodbye to the kids. But I was just like stone faced. Danny was bawling her eyes out, but I was just broken. I had no emotion. I was just like, I had this and I totally lost it. It's all gone. I'd felt like I'd lost family, lost friends, which I have. And so I'm left there, and just like 8 months, I just couldn't sleep, didn't eat very much. I was just broken. And then I actually, after I got the job, moved out of my parents' house. We got our own house for a wee while, and I was just like, to the point where I was like just so messed up inside, and forgotten who I was, forgotten all the things, like just like no thankfulness in me at all. That I actually just decided that, one day I was just like so upset. I knew that I had to make a change. I was really trying to force myself to remember stuff that had happened, like good things that had happened. And I ended up getting counseling. And I cannot stress enough how critical that has been in the last, well, started that in January and we're in November now. So I've been doing that for 10 months, and that's completely shifted my perspective on a lot of stuff. And I feel like after doing Bethel for so long and sort of like being in that place where, you have everything catered for, then you come out of there and you realize that what God is doing, you finally realize, took me ages to get this, but like God has put me, and even now, as you know, like I'm in a place where I'm like still waiting on stuff to happen. I feel like I'm in the, like almost the bottom of a valley, but I'm holding on because I still know that he's good, and I'm still trusting that he's good in spite of the circumstances that I'm in. Talk a wee bit more about counseling, but like since all that has happened, where I'm at now is that I'm actually back moved in with my parents. Wait, we're actually probably not going to be doing that until maybe February, so we're in here for as long as that takes. But look, what I have learned is that forgiveness was the last thing I wanted to do, but I discovered that forgiveness was my key to victory in this. And I learned that forgiveness is totally about myself. It's nothing to do with the people that did me wrong. It is my unwilling responsibility that I have, that has been put on me, that only I can deal with, that no one else is going to deal with for me. If I don't do it, no one else will. I can't expect anybody to. So it's like, since then, like being in that position of like just fully accepting what had happened, understanding where, like seeing where God was in that, and like loosening these people, like that verse, where Jesus talks about whatever you loosen in heaven will be loosened on earth, and whatever you loosen on earth will be loosened in heaven. I had no idea what the heck that meant. I'd heard it so many times, but then really discovering like what the power of forgiveness. It's like I actually didn't have to have those people in front of me that had abandoned me, that I felt had betrayed me. I could just put them in front of me, close my eyes, and in the spirit, quote unquote, release them from any sort of expectation, any desire that I had for an apology, like anything like that. I loosened it in heaven, and so it was loosened on earth. And since then, like walking in that forgiveness, like I don't think I'll ever trust them again. And like that's just, that's just what happens, like I don't even know. I hope they're doing well. We're doing, like, pray for them, and want ask for them, and it's just one of those things. But really did a number on me. But the reason why I did was because I let it. And the one thing that I regret is dwelling on that for 8 whole months in pain and anguish, and not actually getting the help that I needed to get me out of it. Because you can ask Danny, like it's just been so hard, like trying to navigate that for the two of us. And, like, it wasn't just me that lost, it was her that lost as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even just feeling the shame around that, because I blame myself for so long. It's like, that was my fault that she lost her friends. And just like really dealing with those things and talking with her and openly, like, I'm just so impressed by her ability to have my back as a result of all this. And, I love her to death. And it's just been like so growing, even for the two of us as well. Like, look at it that way. Like, the amount of growth that Danny and I have had in the last 2 years would be enough for 20 years, honestly. And like even in counseling as well, like all the stuff that I've learned about forgiveness, it's not even just for that scenario, but like any sort of time in my life where I've had expectations for people that just weren't met, being able to just release them immediately and having so much freedom in the last like few months. Like, let me just be frank. You'd imagine that any 28-year-old man who is married would have their own house, maybe 2 cars, they'd have the best job. And like, even since like adding to all of that stuff that happened, right now I'm in this place of, I've had colitis for the last while, and I'm still contending with that. And it just kind of came out of the blue, and I had to leave work as a result. Like, I don't have my own house. I don't have a job. Can't get a job. Like, it's so hard to get a job in my country. Oh my goodness. And just like really, like, even in this last week since talking to you, Nick, like, I know this is a podcast, but I'm just going to tell you this as if we're just like, chatting, but it's like even just seeing like Danny and I sit together, and the two of us, like, we've got a lot of money together that we were going to save for America, and that's great. All right. But like, really just having God sort of convict us in this time and being like, Peter and Danny, I have blessed you and I've given you so much in this time. And right. And it's like almost like the challenge of what are you doing now? Like, do you need the house? Do you need the job? Do you need, no, don't you just need me? And actually just come back to that whole point. It's like, being back in that conference at 18, just seeing him for the first time again and being like, flip, it's like coming back to that the moment of salvation. And it's like, I didn't have anything back there, and he still met with me when I was at Bethel with no hope of going on a trip to the Philippines to do missions. And then God providing for me in that moment all the money that I needed. Like, I trusted God more when I had no money than now that I have money. Just like seeing that whole thing just kind of fall away, just really taking a look at myself and being like, who am I? How did I let myself become this person? I loved him really well. I trusted him so much. Like, Danny and I bawling our eyes out a few days ago because we just missed the mark. And we wanted to come back to that place of full obedience, full trust, just enjoyment. Like, we're here on earth to just enjoy who he is. Like, that's, talk about the cataclysm or whatever. It's like, why are we here? We are here to love Jesus, to love God, and to enjoy him. And I can trust God for provision when the time comes to have a house, because I know for the next 4 or 5 months, I am going to have a house. I'm moving to the States. So what am I doing? Waiting, trying to gather all this stuff. When right now I can bless others and I can enjoy what I have with her and get to the point again where I can actually just like, I don't need to have that for validation. Like, the amount of times this year that I may have looked at my friends and just compared myself to them because they're further on in life, being like, oh, I wish I could have their house. Oh, like that, like he's got a, like, if my friend listens to this, he'll know it's him, but it's like, oh, he's got a Mercedes and I don't. And, like looking at that stuff and just being like, how did I let myself get there? And like, that's class. Like, those guys have they've worked their butts off for all that stuff. And I love them to death. I bless them. I never want to envy what they have worked for, because I'm so proud of them. And like, really just the point is that my story does not need to look like anybody else's story. And I have really needed to sit down, evaluate where I'm at, and repent for how I wish I had that I was not supposed to be given, and how I have rejected or not even began to receive what the Lord actually had for me that was worth way more than what was over there. And my perspective, Nick, is just it's come back. Like I have been through the ringer, and I wouldn't wish my experience on anyone. I wouldn't wish the sickness that I have right now on anyone. And look, I've seen God. I've seen him heal cancer in front of my eyes. I've seen him dissolve metal in people's arms in front of my eyes. And I still like, and I'm dealing with this, and it's really annoying. But I don't think I can get to the place with everything, with who he is, and that knowing that he is good. I can never turn my back on him and say that he will not do this, because that is not who he is. I cannot do that. It would be the worst thing for me to do. So yeah, that was a long answer to your question, but there's a lot in there to unpack. But look, this is just the way it is. It's probably going to be for other people out there. My encouragement is that just own your story. Where you are right now is totally fine, because that is where you're supposed to be. And my goodness, it took me months to accept that, because I wanted to be somewhere else. But where I am at right now is okay, because at least well, that's where he'll meet me. He'll just meet me in the humility and the honesty of it all. So
You just did exactly what the goal for this whole podcast was, without even really like. I mean, I give loose direction on what we're going to do, man. But the whole point of this is to hear somebody else's story, and we can learn from other people and just listening to them and hearing you walk through your
that's cool.
journey of like the highest high of graduating university, of your parents blessing you to like get to go to Reading, and then you were at Reading for 3 years, and then you meet this amazing girl from Virginia, and you get this amazing youth pastor job at like a very good sized church, very good church, where you're making good money, and you're providing a way for her to be able to come live with you in Ireland, and then
Yeah,
all of that taken away. The rug just completely pulled out from underneath of you, and then
yeah,
physical ailments and keep losing jobs and moving back in with your parents, and doing what we all do with comparing ourselves to others. We do the same thing, like our house compared to other friends that have sold 2 houses, and now they're in a house with either land, or they've been able to like roll it, and we're still living in the same
yeah,
little house in Old Town. And so that was the
yeah,
point of this podcast, was to glean from people's stories, man. And whoever listens to that will certainly get a lot out of what you had to share from your experience, man. I really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing, man.
yeah. No
Thanks, man.
problem.
Well, I'm
Cool.
gonna. I was good. Normally I'll end it with like with some closing wisdom, man. If you have something good, if not, man, I feel like you hit it hard there. But if
Yeah,
you have any closing thoughts?
yeah. I suppose like to be honest with you, like before coming on here, I hadn't a clue what I was going to talk about, and I sort of wrestled with like what to prepare and all that. So I do appreciate your questions and all, but like I suppose I don't know. I think just stay. If there's anything, just make sure you stay close, and your story is your own, and Jesus is really doing, like, I do believe that Jesus is doing something mighty in my life, and I don't know what it is. I have no idea what it is. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where exactly I'm going to do it, but I know that something's happening in me, and I'm just letting him do it. So like even in the valley, like I'm in a valley right now. It's easy when you're on the mountaintop to really go for it and to press in. I know that, and it's really hard when you're in the valley to really press into your pain and own it. And but I know that even in the valley, it's like I just had to choose how this was going to go. I needed to make the decision. I could either die in my pain, or I could live in expectation of redemption and hope for myself and for my wife, for my future kids as well. Because man, like we're not doing this for ourselves. Like there's things that need to be broken, like patterns of behavior that I have that need to be broken off. That's not just for me. Like I've got my kids and my grandkids in mind, and I'm just, it's always generational. So we'll break the curses now so that our kids don't have to. So look, if you're listening, just do the work, listen to what he's doing. And if he's not saying anything, get that book out and start reading it cover to cover and find something. And if you're still not hearing anything, then you stay the course And what's that thing that people say? It's like whenever you've done everything you can and there's nothing else you can do, stand.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had stand moments. But look, there is an end. There always is an end in sight. I don't know what that looks like. I am very hopeful when I say that. I've seen other people come to the end of seasons, and that's great. I celebrate that, as you should. So prophetically celebrating others so that I know that it'll be even sweeter whenever I get to that place of celebrating and having people around me really just encourage and just get to celebrate and just feast on the goodness with me. So
That's awesome, man. This is some I'm reminded of this all the time. Yes, some things grow in the mountains. You can grow coffee, you can grow, some different things, but farmland's in the valley. Farmland's not on the mountaintop.
yeah,
You know,
that's
Jesus went up to the mountains to pray, but then he came back down to the valley to do the work. So the work's done in the valley. The work's not done on the mountain.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Praise God, dude. You're awesome,
Yeah.
Peter. So if you have listened to this entire conversation, you might as well like and subscribe, man.
Oh yeah,
So Peter,
absolutely.
thanks for the chat, dude. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's always a pleasure.
We
And we'll
will
chat
talk soon,
soon.
man. All right.
All right.